HM1200K Makita hammer. No hammer. No wonder. Wrong grease. Right, service needed. Strip her down, clean it out, change any seals needed, put her back together. Covered in grease, all the wrong type. That's black moly grease. Molybdenum disulfite grease. Too heavy and no good for these hammers. And there's another problem there. That bearing's gone. So we'll have to change that as well. one bearing. Change that, clean this, wash all this, re-grease, rebuild. There we go. Bearings, top cap, and an O-ring. These metal rings should be fine. Old top plate for keeping the grease on, just totally smashed. This here plastic ring here is actually bears down on the cordon rod, stops it from coming up. That's smashed, that needs to be replaced. Inside, it's obviously been smashed up before. All in here's chipped. The housing's all damaged here. So the con rod or piston was previously smashed up in the past, damaged this housing and was replaced. And I know it was a needle bearing because inside the piston head there were still old needle rollers jammed onto the head, stuck into the grease. So they're all cleaned out now. All we need to do now is replace a few parts and get it back together again. That. Get rid of that. 6200 and a 6202. Press both of them on. That's her. U bearings in the motor. Where the ender straps on. That's that piece ready. Now for the big bearing, main offender. That's sitting down on here. A little bit of heat helps it go on. That's your bearing. Next up is your crank. 2 keyways either side. Don't lose them. Press that on. Make sure that's turning smoothly. It's not catching or anything. You can go ahead and fit your gear on top. Make sure your 2 keyways are located right. Drop it on. Press it on the bearing press. That's her. Ready to go. Get a bit of grease down on here. A bit of grease in this bearing. I'm using Bosch grease here because it's heavier. And also, don't forget, that's the oil ring as well. That's a wee threaded screw for the armature, so as the machine's running, this motor's turning, The oil is actually getting thrown out and lifted up out of the bore down here. Stops the oil from getting down and to the motor. And get yourself a good gobagooey stuff. This is a gasket fix. Just seal this gearbox up. There's no actual gasket for this machine. The gasket fix will do the same job. Just something to help keep the grease on. Doesn't have to be exact. That's it. Back to the hammer. Refit your motor. Then drop on the head. I'll also just replace them brushes. They're worn on just here. They're not expensive, so just replace them. Best to replace them when they go like that, simply because that's the edge of the brush holder there. That means instead of sitting in the holder nice and square, it's sitting off at an angle, as you can tell by the wear pattern on the top of the brush. That should be nice and flat. So instead of sitting against the armature like this, she's sitting like that. In other words, whenever the armature is running, this can be energizing the wrong segment at the wrong time. Causes the machine to run very rough. So if you see them looking like this, just replace them. The machine will run better if you replace them. And your top cap, as you can see, this one's been completely destroyed. It needs to have a cap on it like this. That stops the actual conrod from lifting up. Conrod will be stopped against that there if it does ever lift. Get rid of this one, but we'll just keep the O-ring. And that should be it. One Makita Hedge M1200K. Washed out, new bearings, few new seals on it, new grease, plus a new top cap and brushes. It should be her. You can hear it initially struggling to run. That's because of this heavier grease I put on. Far better for sealing and for the O-rings and for the compression. You get a good hammer out of it, but also very thick and viscous, so it's a lot harder on the motor. That's why at the end I use this here healthy grease. Exact same grease as the Bosch and the Makita, just the healthies work out cheaper. So that there helps it run a lot easier. It has the advantage of the heavier grease on the seals. So after a few seconds of running, you'll actually hear the motor pick up speed as it works through that heavier grease. Sounds good to go. That's her. One Makita hammer, serviced and up and running again. A Hedge M1200K shipping hammer from 2003. 20 years worth of work done on it, still running strong. That's her, ready to go. Bosch sawn for repair. This is the GKS 190 from 2011. Nothing. Straight away. I see that brush is touching the armature. This one is not. See the two brushes and holders? They're not sitting level. This one's tweaked off to one side. Problem looks to be here. And that would be another problem. Actual connector looks to be damaged. So yeah, that brush holder, that's damaged. That needs to be replaced. Get this here pin out. We hole just here. Put your screwdriver in there. Pull the pin out. There's a little lever here. Actually locks it into place. Unless you push it on, it won't come out. That one's okay. The armature looks okay. Keep that. And replace the wee connector. Just in case. This is what actually connects the brush holder down onto the field. And for this side, a new brush holder. So wee pins here drop on first, you have to push them in and then drop down the brush holder. And the actual connectors then go on after. To have the brush holder on first before you can fit the wee connecting pin. Also fit a new pin on this one as well. Old brushes will be fine, nothing wrong with them. See if that works. Much better. That's her. One Bosch saw up and running again. Little simple fix, that one. Some of the Bosch saws and miter saws use little brass connectors like that there. Sometimes the connectors can burn away because of these because they're hollow in the middle. The two wee ends that's actually connecting, they can break away or burn away. You have to replace them. This one, just the brush holder melted, probably got too hot. The brass holder melted through the plastic. Brush then won't move down, or else it's actually tweaked over to one side on the armature, causing it to spark. Replace the brush holder, fixes the problem. Okay, a new one on today. Makita Hedge trimmer, or a Hedge cutter. This is the DUH751 2021 Makita Hedge trimmer, and she's a big hedge trimmer. Can't even get her on camera. Big massive trimmer. She's done a bit of work anyway. What's wrong with her? Hold her on. Hold the button to power her on. Nothing. Buttons are working. The switch is doing nout. So a few things that could be. It's not this switch because it's obviously powering on and going through the modes. Could be this switch, the actual trigger. Could also be the switch for the safety. And also it could be wiring. Because this here handle rotates. Maybe the wiring could have fatigued and broke one of the cables or broke one of the ends off or something. I don't know. Handy machine. Well, actual motor assembly moves with the gearbox. Pretty cool. Let's get under it, see if we can fix it. Now, how to get into it, that's the question. Never seen one of these before, never worked on one before. So this will be a learning curve. I want on here. I think I have to open this first. This actual handle is rotating and this body staying fixed. So this body must have to come off first before I can open this handle. It's actually a wee socket head up here. This must need to come off. To take the safety handle cover off. There we go. Take this off. Now we can get under here. Couldn't be that simple, could it? One loose connector. Where is that going to? You can see them wires are a little bit nipped as well. There is a bit of a pinch on them, but I don't think they're broken. And also, this wiring will be part of the controller itself. If the controller's gone, this won't be worth fixing. Doesn't matter what brand. Controllers for the brushless motors that actually run the motor, they're always more expensive than the machine itself. So if the controller's actually gone, it wouldn't be worth fixing. That'll be part of this wiring. But a Makita being a Makita, the actual stator itself will be separate. You can replace the stator, the rotor on its own. Wiring will be part of the controller. Then the battery terminals and switches, they'll all be separate as well. So individual components you can replace, but the controller itself, if that fails, you're scuppered. Somebody was in before, look, missing screw. Somebody had to go, another missing screw. Tried to just open this handle, but didn't realise you had to open the whole thing. Maybe this isn't a loose connector, maybe they pulled this out when they were trying to open it. Now, it's not the lead going to the switch. Could that be it? No. What is that doing in there? So that is off of here. This is the switch for the safety handle, which you have to press to switch the motor on. What is it doing in there? Somebody has it on this and shoved that in there. So that switch is actually meant to be over here. So that's on here. Your safety handle's here, which this lever should be pushing onto a switch. That is meant to be in here. No wonder this doesn't work. I wonder if this is actually the problem. Obviously it's not right anyway, so we'll try this first. Right, see if we can get this thing back together the correct way. Which won't be easy. That needs to go there. The motor needs to go here. Also, there's two pieces lost here. There's actually meant to be a damper on there and one on here. So that's why this thing's actually got so much play in the head. He's missing these two dampers. They're just little rubber bits that keep this nice and solid but give it a little bit of flexibility. This thing's actually moving way too much. So this whole motor assembly here with the cutting head, she's flapping about. So that's not going to be good. That'll need to be addressed if I can get this up and running. But we'll see if we can get her running first. Does that cure it? Only one way to find out. Oh, forgot. Power on, safety on, nothing. Not making a click, not even making an attempt to start. So we have more problems. We're just fixed nothing. It's jobs like this that makes you an expert in a specific machine, because you will have opened and closed it that many times. You will know exactly how the thing goes together. So what didn't we look at? Main trigger. It's going to be the first one. This one does work because I already tested that one, but I didn't test this one. So that works. Power's coming from the battery. Switch is fine. Controller doesn't have any signs of failure. Sometimes when something blows, you'll get a wee burn mark, or the actual epoxy resin up here will split somewhere. You'll see a wee black stain, or it'll lift around the edge. This is all fine. Could still be the controller, but it doesn't look like it is. Test the stator next. That looks fine. Stator's good. Rotor's good. Connections are all good. So it's not this. Right, can't see any specific problem. Could be the switch, because for some reason they've actually used a drill switch, which has a forward and reverse switch built into it. She was in the neutral position, but even in the neutral position, it still works. So I don't actually think that matters too much, but to save wasting any more time, I'm just going to give this a quick test. I'm going to just use a thermal imaging camera instead. Stick this on, see if it can pick up any hot spots in the board. If I get a hot spot, I'll know it's actually faulty. But at the minute, my phone's bust, can't use the touchscreen, so can't hit record on this here app. Right, so that's a no-go. A little infiray thermal imaging camera, very handy piece of kit to have about. Otherwise, you can get a lot of money and a lot of time ordering and swapping out parts to see if it's something else, because the controllers, there's no other way to tell if they're actually faulty apart from a thermal imaging camera, or narrowing down your search, or by eliminating other components to say that they're not faulty. So you could end up buying 2 switches and a stator and it'd still be the controller. Thermal imaging camera cuts out that there. Not cheap to buy, but saves you a lot of time and money. This ain't going to be worth fixing, sadly. And I think the boy already opened it, might have known that. So I'm going to have to stick this all back together again for nothing. The joys. That's it. That's how to waste a bunch of time on a Makita DHU 751 Hedge trimmer. Controller fault, wouldn't be worth replacing it. Right, big yoke this time. Big Bosch breaker. This is the GSH16 2017 machine. What's this one doing? Well, she runs, does she hammer? Yes. Right, she runs and she hammers. What's she left on for? Right, customer says she keeps shutting down. Only runs for so long. Get under here. See what the crack is here. Screws were loose. Say somebody's already been on this. A wee bit of burning going on there, look. So as for electronics and speed governors, that kind of jazz, there's nothing on it. It's a fairly simple machine. Direct run from the power to the motor. All there is power coming in, straight to a switch, and through a suppression filter, straight onto the motor. No electronics at all. So for this to be shutting down, it has to be a fairly simple fault. Could be a motor overheating, or it could be a broken field. Try her again without the cover. There's the problem. See the sparks? So there's the problem. So it looks like the suppression box itself, suppression filter. The switch, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. There's nothing really to it. If it's switching on, it's not the switch. And it could be connections in the switch. Oh, they're all tight. And the actual connections to this suppression filter are also good. Which means it's more than likely the suppression filter itself. There we go. The filter itself is actually gone. She's overheated. So that must be shorting out inside, causing a short circuit across here. So that's the problem. Need to replace this. But have I got one? One suppression filter. That's the part number there, if you never need one. This here, it's not a cheap part, it's quite expensive actually. And this part, they call it a suppression filter all it is a small capacitor. Every machine like this here has it. Corded machine will have some sort of small capacitor near the switch of the power source. All it's doing is cleaning up the AC waveform that the actual motor itself is messing up and causing interference with. If you don't clean it up, it'll actually cause interference with other delicate equipment plugged into the same power source, so into the same socket in the wall or transformer, or it'll affect certain frequencies, or it could affect your radio. You'll get interference through your radio. Generally, doesn't really matter. For any other small machine, if it blows, cut it out, wire the thing in direct. Doesn't really matter. It's not going to make that much of a difference. The actual suppressors themselves cost next to nothing, a few pound for it. This one, on the other hand, cost around €50. So this thing isn't cheap. That's because this is more than likely doing more than just suppression. This could be actually controlling the speed of the motor. May not actually be a controller, but the capacitor inside could play a role in the speed at which the actual motor runs. As I said in other videos, if you run these at the wrong speed, you lose the hammer harmonics. They have to be running at the right frequency, the right harmonics, to actually get the hammer to hammer properly. Change the speed, you change the hammer function. You can't actually weaken the hammer or lose it completely. So these have to run at the right speed. So in this case, you do actually need to refit this thing. Luckily, there isn't very much to refitting it. Doesn't matter which wire goes where, just as long as they're on. Polarity just doesn't matter, it's only a suppression filter at the end of the day. This one here is a wee bit burnt. So I'll actually just cut that off just in case. There's a bad connection as well. Just fit a new wee spade connector onto it, just in case that wire's burnt inside. See, that one's been changed before as well. Somebody obviously thought a broken wire was causing this problem, and they've already replaced this spade, but it was actually this suppression filter overheated and burned inside. This was probably arcing off and causing these to burn up. Which you don't want, because these leads aren't very long. Don't have much room to play. Run that again as is, make sure it's not sparking. She looks good to go. And be careful where you stick your fingers with live wires. It's grounding the suppression. She's live back here until you switch the switch on. These ones here still are dead. Very loose inside the holder, mind you, rattling around. There's this top cover that actually holds it down. That's her. That should sort that problem out. Should be able to keep on running now without stopping. Fixed up. A very expensive noise suppression filter. Like I say, normally they cost maybe what, €1 or €2. That one there costs about 50. Very expensive, but more than likely it is actually controlling the hammer of the machine. So she needs to be put on. But that's her sorted. Here's a wee something new for yous. Cordless Stihl chainsaw. This is the MSA 140C. Nice wee unit it is. Very nice battery release. Nice wee size. Cool. Anyway, what's wrong with it? Battery's charged. She's doing nout. No other little safeties on it. Now, it's not good when they do nothing. What do we do here? That's not a good start. Piece of metal. Looks to be off a piece of wire rope. If he's cut through some wire rope and jammed the blade, he could have done damage to the motor. Right. Get under here. Let's see what we can do. First thing, just like a normal chainsaw, pull off the sprocket first. I can't find a breakdown on this thing to save my life. I can find breakdowns on the older corded machines. Can't find any on this cordless one. Either it's fairly new or they don't sell many parts for it. Now, she's a 2021 machine, so she's not old, but when she's on here, she's obviously not under warranty. Put that back on again. Save us from making a mess. So that's obviously our problem. This is the motor itself, the brushless motor unit in here. So this whole fan assembly is the rotor that fits on this shaft and goes up and around. So that's the same as this output shaft. That ain't moving. Shouldn't necessarily be turning freely, but it should be able to turn steps fairly freely. Should be able to get a step, move to the next, and it should jump. That's not turning at all. Something's going on there. Now this is a wee bit worrying because she's not actually doing anything. I can't hear it humming or click or attempting to turn at all, which is worrying because it could be the controller fried. If that jammed solid, you kept pulling the trigger, trying to get it to run, the extra load and current could have caused something to blow on the actual control board. She's all potted and sealed anyway. That's all the switch you have for turning it on and off. Tiny little switch for actually switching it on and off. That's all it is, we micro switch. Just controlled by this here lever. And the spring for the lever is heavier duty than that actual micro switch. As opposed, brushless motor, that's all you need. And there's the bit I don't like. Big springs for the lock. So that is the lock disengaged. That's it engaged. It's not turning at all there. She's somewhat free there. Right, we're going to clean it anyway. There that goes. Right, there's only one way to do it. Just take it off. It's going to be risky. That's the motor and spindle lock all in one. There's nothing wrong with the motor itself. That's running and stepping like it should. It was a chain brake that was actually jamming it. Switch is fine. There's another micro switch up in here for the chain brake. Just pull that out. Test that as well. So that's okay. quick clean shows up the main problem. This here black ring here is for your oil feed. So the actual slot on the shaft of the motor drives this plastic worm gear. So there's a thread which actually turns this little cog here, pumps your oil or your chain oil onto your blade. This little plastic piece here, the ring, as you can see, is actually melted into the plastic housing. That's the problem. But can I get it out, and can I get a spare part? See if I can just tap this out. That is the original problem. She's fouled up and burnt into the plastic housing here. If that seizes, the motor can't turn. You pull the trigger then, try and force the motor to turn, she's going to blow something. So the question is, has it blown anything? See if we can tidy this up, free it up, so it's actually able to turn. Then we'll see if the motor still runs or not. Okay, see if that helps. It's free enough there anyway. So as that spins, it's turning this wee cog gear, which is a little miniature pump, which pumps the oil out to the chain. So hopefully this should work. Should be just a matter of tucking everything back in. Re-engage that chain brake. We're not looking bad. Actual battery lock is just sitting on there. Safety spring, and a push button for here. That's just your trigger lock. Push button sitting out, trigger can't go down. You push it on, you can travel on the whole way. So That's just sitting there. These two screws are the long ones. That's what's holding down your chain brake. Just get that back on before we make a mess. Now she turns. And then she's locked. Question is, will she work? Nice one. Controller's still good, she hasn't blown it. This is what the problem was. Probably cut through a piece of wire or rope or something. That was what a bit of metal was. Bound up underneath here. Damaged this, melted the plastic. Plastic eventually started getting eaten away, sticking onto the housing till it bound up completely. Sadly though, I still don't have any parts for this thing. Hopefully it will work as it is. I can't see anybody supplying these here parts. But if I can get the parts, I have to replace this here plastic screw for the oil pump and the plastic housing as well. So it won't be cheap. Now, does it rub is the question. Nope. As you can see, the oil pump is running as well. Nice one. Get her back together here now. Get it back to this man. Just drop on here first. These wee clips. Push back your lock, that's in the way. Same on this side, drop it on. Click it into place. Obviously, give your chain and bar a good blowout with a compressor, just in case there's anything left on the track or the wheels top and bottom that could have got onto this here. Any pieces of wire, rope or steel or something. Make sure that's all clean also. That should be it. Ready to cut again. One Stihl cordless chainsaw up and running again. Nice one. Nice wee machine as well. Have a Stihl myself at the house. A wee 181 petrol chainsaw. The wee cordless ones are a nice wee job. Quick and easy to run and a lot quieter. Wouldn't mind one of these myself. Oh well, that's how you dismantle it, fix it and put it back together. Thanks for watching, folks. Makita router. This is the older 6320. Oh, that sounds nasty. Lovely. Not good. Right, new bearings needed. This should be an easy enough fix. First off, remove your handle for locking the base. Open it then, just a few screws. Careful when you take the two halves apart, this base is going to shit off because it's on springs. Can be a tight fit. Hopefully the housing is not destroyed. Pull that out. Plenty of sawdust gets into these. Pull out your brush holders. Lift everything out. Two bad bearings. Everything else is just a field and your housing, switch and brushes. That's it. Not much on them. Good quality, a little reliable machine. These wee 1/4 inch Makita routers were always very good. The 3600, the modern equivalent of them, not as good. Still good, but not as good as these were. You leave the collet inside if you want. Doesn't have to come out. We've got a 6003 on the bottom and a standard 608 on the top. Press them on. One of the simplest repairs you ever need to do. Brushes are still okay. Drop it all back in. Click on your brushes. Spring goes to this side. This damper side with a wee notch on it goes on up here. It's a bit tricky getting the two together because you have to hold it down with one hand, just putting the cover on with the other one. Replace your special nut again. You may have to adjust this to get the handle to the right location. This is set in, but it's not set into an exact hole. See, there's little notches. You can change the position, because that nut only locks on one place on the thread, and if it's sitting at the wrong place where it's uncomfortable, you can back it off and spin the nut around so it locks in a different location. So stick it on and test it out. That's no good. That's better. You want it to be able to operate it with your thumb and finger. Locked, free. That's what that sounds like now. Much smoother. That's much more better there. Not doing too bad for a 2005 machine. Almost 20 years old, still going strong. That's how you replace the bearings on a Makita 3620 1/4 inch router. Simple as that.